Hello, everyone. Today I will be talking about Zimbabwe and its media system. Zimbabwe's key characteristics. Zimbabwe is located in southern Africa, bordered by Botswana, Mozambique, and Zambia. Zimbabwe is known for the Zambezi River and its tropical climate, but also mountain terrain. Historical times including the migration of Central Africans. Before Zimbabwe became colonized by the British colonies in the 19th century, the country was home to many stone ruins, trade networks, and a great kingdom. According to research platform Britannica, Bantu speaking individuals migrated from Central Africa to the southern area approximately during the 5th and 10th centuries. The Bantu speaking individuals brought new life into Zimbabwe, including agriculture, building skills, and their own methods of development. The migration made a huge impact on the southern land of Africa by greatly growing the population there, expanding their culture. The Central Africans mainly migrated because of lack of resources in the central area due to climate changes and famine. Zimbabwe is a lower middle income country with rising poverty. However, the country has strong growth potential according to the World Bank Group. After the US placed tariffs on a majority of countries, with the falling of Zimbabwe's economy, they have paused all tariffs on US goods to boost trades to earn income. The US currently has a 15% tariff on Zimbabwe's goods, affecting their economic development. BBC confirmed in April that Zimbabwe was doing this to promote the growth of Zimbabwean exports in the US. Addressing Christianity in Zimbabwe. According to the 2022 census, 85.3% of Zimbabwean citizens identified as Christians. The British colonies brought in Christian ideologies when they colonized them in the 19th century. Zimbabwe is also known to have Christian missionaries visit their land to spread the Christian religion. Social life in Zimbabwe is shared between two major ethnic groups, the Shona and the Ndebele. The Zimbabwean citizens hold a strong emphasis on family and community, with families often prioritizing the group's values over their own personal values. Social norms within Zimbabwean society are generally patriarchal, with men holding more decision making power and being the head of the household by traditional standards. Zimbabwe's social culture is still behind in modern day values. For cultural importances, like many other traditional cultures, Zimbabweans hold high respect for their elders. There is a deep respect for elders, which is reflected in many social customs, including standing up to greet an individual that walks into a room, using surnames and formal pronouns, and also receiving items with both hands, not one, to show respect. Like any other modern day country, Zimbabwe has access to most mediums of a media system, but still behind in different aspects. Radio, social media, television, and print media are all available in Zimbabwe. Radio is the most widely used medium because citizens living in rural areas still have access, and that is how they get most of their important information. The Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, ZBC, is the most used national broadcaster, operating several radio stations that are mostly pro government. Reporters Without Borders have reported that censorship has gone down in the most recent years, but that has not stopped government from trying to control editorial decisions. That is when social media laws come into play as well. Social media in many places is a vital tool for independent journalists, activists, and citizens to discuss issues and acknowledge censorship. Facebook and WhatsApp are the most used platforms and are also easy access for those living in Zimbabwe. Even though things are improving, the government has a history of surveillance, harassment, and arrests based on social media posts. For example, back in the April of this year, 2025, Zimbabwean police arrested citizens for participating in protests against the current president because of seeing posts through social media sites. Police in Zimbabwe arrested 95 protesters on charges of promoting public violence and for breaches of peace after they took part in the protests demanding that President Emerson Mnangagwa re signed, according to the BBC. Two regional comparisons I want to address is Zimbabwe versus South Africa and Zambia. Reporters Without Borders have reports on both Africa and Zambia's media system function. Zimbabwe's media landscape reflects a broader post colonial African experience shaped by historical, political, and economic factors. It has evolved from colonial era control to a hybrid system characterized by both state dominance and emerging private and digital media voices. South Africa represents a semi peripheral model in world systems theory integrated into global media flows and democratic institutions. Zimbabwe, by contrast, remains peripheral, controlled by political and economic issues, resulting in limited global engagement. Between Zimbabwe and Zambia, they both share post colonial aspects and use of English as a unifying language. However, Zambia's relatively more pluralistic media environment illustrates how political openness correlates with media diversity better there compared to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe mirrors Zambia's developmental struggles but falls behind South Africa's democratic model. The core concepts that apply to Zimbabwe's media system include the media dependency theory, the diffusion of innovations theory, censorship, and media globalization. The government has been known to use social media to spread its propaganda and consolidate authoritarian rule. However, a large majority of Zimbabweans are aware of and use social media as they have expressed a desire for unrestricted access. Noted by Afrobarometer, Zimbabweans are split on whether they are dependent on social media and if they feel completely controlled on what they see and interact with. Moving on, Everett Rogers' diffusion of innovations theory explains how new ideas and technology spread through a social system over time. An example of media adoption through this theory is these four concepts: innovation, platforms such as Facebook, X, and TikTok; diffusion, high uptake among younger Zimbabweans for news and communication; barriers, government censorship, internet costs, and rural connectivity gaps slow diffusion; influence of opinion leaders, activists, journalists, and influencers play major roles as change agents in diffusion. Going back to censorship in the media, Zimbabweans are used to being censored in their media used by the government and authorities. The Broadcasting Services Act of 2001 gives broadcasting licenses under government control, and only state aligned entities, like the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, can operate nationwide. Lastly, media globalization in Zimbabwe is increasing the role of digital platforms and online content, particularly for younger audiences. However, it is unfortunately still shaped by a media landscape dominated by state controlled outlets and restrictive laws. While there is a growing push for media diversity through the community, challenges remain due to economic hardship, a struggle for media outlets to develop sustainable online revenue, and government control that limits independent press freedom. Digital communication status. According to Data Reportal, internet usage is growing but still limited. In January 2025, the number of internet users was around 6.45 million, giving an online usage rate of 38.4% of the population in Zimbabwe. In 2022, WhatsApp is the most popular internet in Zimbabwe, accounting for 44% of all mobile internet usage in the country. WhatsApp has changed the way Zimbabweans communicate and share information through groups and broadcast lists discussing everything from politics, government, sports, and music, shown from a study by Quartz. Current events in Zimbabwe. On the 1st of July in 2025, Faith Zaba, editor of the independent newspaper Zimbabwe Independent, was arrested and charged after publishing a satirical column titled "When You Become Mafia State," which criticized President Emerson's government and values. In a statement issued by the Zimbabwe Union of Journalists, the union condemned it as a clear case of criminalizing journalism over editorial content. They also stated satirical commentary, whether critical or humorous, is protected speech and should not be criminalized. This situation reflects structural issues in Zimbabwe's overall media system. This includes laws and enforcement that allow for censorship, frameworks that limit independent opinion, and the risk of self censorship among journalists due to authorities' reactions. Zaba was luckily bailed shortly after the conflict. Future communication in the media system. It is hard to say exactly what I see in Zimbabwe's future in media, however, there could be improvements. Economic challenges, state control, and infrastructural limitations threaten to slow or even halt progress. However, as we have learned through lectures, censorship and state laws have implication in many countries for media usage. I believe that with the media becoming more available in rural areas of Zimbabwe, improvements will be made in the future. That includes less worry for censorship, better media access in the rural areas. With 38.4% of the population actively using the internet, I believe the percentage will increase in the coming years. More applications might become accessible on top of the most popular one Zimbabweans use, WhatsApp. In conclusion, Zimbabwe's media system is still short of being considered free, but there have been some fortunate changes like the ones I mentioned in earlier slides. Strict laws implemented by the government still have higher authority compared to journalists speaking out about given issues. As we saw earlier, journalists are still targets for being arrested for having a differing opinion. Complete freedom of speech in the media is still far away, but that does not mean it will never come for Zimbabweans. Thank you for listening.